your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can always check out our show on the Process to Perform channel on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, like, and rate, and review that. Check out the videos we put up every week, including the ones of upcoming opponent, San Francisco 49ers. Our show is always sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, basketball, hockey, to entertainment and political props, we've got it all. So head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So the Packers are 2-point favorites going into this game. They're 7-3, hosting the Niners, who are a kind of a surprising 5-5. Both teams are looking up in their division, though. The Niners currently are tied for fourth, and the Packers are obviously in third place behind Detroit, who might be the class of the NFC right now, and then Minnesota, who is having a surprisingly good year. But focusing on the 49ers, and I'll just gloss over it real quick. We didn't put out a show for the Packers' last win against the Bears. Here are the key takeaways. Defense did not give up a lot of big plays. I thought that was huge. But just from a run or pass rush lane discipline, we had some real trouble with Caleb Williams. We had some trouble with our run fits. I think a lot of that was just his athletic ability and how they kind of, quite frankly, from a scheme standpoint, I thought this was one of the few games that maybe schematically the offensive coordinator for the Bears did a really good job of finding angles in Jeff Hafley's defense and exploiting those angles, exploiting the ability to block inside out or outs. I mean, in other words, what I mean by angles is when you have second level leverage on the person you're supposed to block consistently, it just makes it more difficult. You put a guy in an inflection point where, should I run over the top? Should I go behind him? Like, there's a couple things going on there. One, there's a lot of eye candy with all the RPOs. And so particularly at the second level, it seemed like, talking about the linebackers, it seemed like maybe we're a half step slow in some spots, and that kind of gave them a better blocking angle than you wanted. But also, I think just schematically, they did a really good job of identifying kind of soft spots in the defense and exploiting them, given the personnel that they had. So I think, hats off to them offensively. They scored 19 points. They don't deserve to win the football game, but I think they were only averaging 11.5 for their 6 games prior. So it was certainly a better production day for them. And then you look at us offensively. You're in the red zone 5 times. You score 3 of those. Your Jordan Love has obviously the turnover that you want to have back. You go for it on 4th down there. I think regardless if you like the call or not, you Matt LaFleur, you trust him, and you stick with what works. Josh Jacobs is going to have the best year that nobody talks about, because he starts the game in complete dominating fashion and makes all these really good chicken salad plays. And, his yards after contact, I don't know if he's first or second in the league, but it's just amazing how much he can do after somebody hits him, which is usually right around the line of scrimmage. This game was a safety sitting in the hole, a 12-inch hole, missing by 6 inches. And so, you're just really amazed by the ability of Josh Jacobs to make people miss, to jump cut in the hole, and then to run through arm tackles at a level that, everybody's good at their thing. This might be what he's as good at as anybody we've seen since maybe Amon. At just being able to run through arm stuff. The offensive line had they had an effective day covering people up. They didn't do a great job moving humans, but I don't know if that's their strong suit. But they can stick to guys, and certainly the scheme gets people open at a high, a scheme creates opportunities for Josh Jacobs to find holes at a high rate. It might, when the play might start on the right B gap, he ends up on the backside C. He's just that kind of back right now. We're going to see a little bit of that on the table with Christian McCaffrey as well. So very, very unique running style when you can be able to jump cut laterally, go vertically, and run through as many people and as many arm tackles as he's doing. And then obviously, the importance of special teams. Rich Bisaccia, I think sometimes because we do so poorly, generally speaking, in special teams over the last couple of years, Rich was brought in obviously over some fanfare because of the head coaching position he held at the interim head coaching position with the Raiders. but then he really hasn't, necessarily except for Keyshawn Nixon, hasn't delivered as far as outperforming expectations from a unit standpoint. But they talked about it all week. Talking about the Packers internally and how they're going to block this field goal, and then when it matters the most, Carl Brooks comes up with a big play. You move to 7-3, everything's fine. You keep the losing streak alive in Chicago, life is good. Now you flip to the San Francisco 49ers. They're 5-5. A couple speed runs this season. I think the biggest thing you're looking at really is they've had a lot of injuries. They continue to have injuries. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is out. George Kittle was out last week. We don't know if he's going to make it or not. Christian McCaffrey was out earlier in the year. They just haven't been finishing or closing out games in the style that we're used to seeing from the San Francisco 49ers over the last couple of years. And it is, when you look at their stats, they should be, on paper, they should be amongst the division leaders. So offensively, they're averaging like 25 points per game. That's good for like 8th in the league. They're averaging almost 400 yards a game. That's good for 2nd in the league. So those numbers right there make you go, okay, this is not a 5-5 football team. These guys rush for 5 yards per carry. They rush for almost 150 yards per game, 148 yards per game. That's good for 7. So why are they in the cellar of the NFC West? And there's really one main reason for that. I mean, the Cardinals are 6-4 in the top of the AFC West, or NFC West, excuse me. And you have the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Niners all sitting at 5-5. And this is one of those really good divisions where cannibalism takes control and they start eating each other's record. I think that offensively, these guys are still great at skill position wise when they're healthy. Juszczyk is still a great engine for them. Kittle, when he's in, I think Kittle it shows what a difference Kittle makes when he's not in the football game. Such a rare talent. Christian McCaffrey obviously being healthy, such a rare talent. Deebo Samuel doing all the things he can do. They really are missing Brandon Knight. You lose him in injury. He had that big holdout, and as always is, and it sucks. But guys hold out, then they get their contract or whatever, and then all of a sudden they come back and they get hurt. Ricky Pearsall, it was a first-round draft pick. I think he went to Arizona State, if I'm right. Then he went to Florida. First-round pick, came in probably to provide depth. He was thrust into the starting role, plays the slot. Good player. Certainly not a Brandon Ayuk. Tough to replace that kind of production. Up front is where I think the opportunities lie with this team, which sounds weird, having one of the best to ever do it, Trent Williams. I would say this though. For these guys, for me, I'm always more impressed with Shanahan's scheme and just like Matt LaFleur's scheme than you are actually watching these guys. I think the scheme puts these guys in a lot of positions where success is murky, where they might feel like they didn't do anything to dominate that player, but you still get a huge play, especially with the talent that they have in the backfield. You kind of take Trent Williams off the table, although he has been giving up maybe some more pressures in the passing game than you're used to seeing, or at least if you're a casual fan. The Packers, to me, especially if Kittle's not in the game, the Packers should feel really, really good about the other matchups. I really like Jake Brendel. I know him. He's a smart guy. He's strong. Can play physical, a little bit undersized, but very, very powerful man. But if you look across the board, I think they're starting a rookie at right guard. They just don't have guys that are going to physically dominate in the run of the pass game. Especially, again, they use that tight end position at such a high rate that you've seen even last week, and we'll show it on tape. They're going to bring in another offensive lineman to try to replace Kittle and just say, we'll take for the most part, take the passing opportunities off the board with that particular player because of what they're lacking when they don't have a guy like that being able to block in line, because he is very, very unique in the National Football League as a guy who can really do it all the time in position. But when they get the formula right, I mean, the bottom line, this team is still a real problem. They can put up points in bunches. And, Brock Purdy's he's not the revelation that he was when you're Mr. Irrelevant. You're doing some amazing things. But bottom line, he's a hell of a good football player. He continues to make a ton of plays, throws on time. Window passes, particularly across the middle, are amazing. And as we'll see in this tape, he's got some wheels. So let's watch and see if we can get something out of this. First things first. This is one of the things as a Packers meeting room. You go, okay, I've got Ricky Pearsall getting the Bermuda Triangle of DBs for Seattle. We've got outside left Jawan Jennings up top. He's in the slot. Actually, there's a guy outside, but he's playing inside out and ends up winning this route on an outcut, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And then maybe more importantly, somehow the safety came down and played Debo Samuel one-on-one. If I'm Brock Purdy, like that ball's going to Debo for a touchdown right here. You see the spacing on the yellow line, crazy. But you just don't want to get in a situation. And the problem is, you've got Dwight Jennings, who's a great player. You've got Debo. You've got McCaffrey they can bring out. And then you've got Ricky Pearsall, who's a rookie, but he's a first round pick, so he's got that body. It's like, who do you want to mess with? And if you leave three guys on Ricky Pearsall, might not be what you're looking for defensively. So you look at McCaffrey, and this is a draw play. I just like to watch his vision and the way that he can operate. His ability to jump cut laterally is amazing. You see, they bring the offensive lineman in. I want you to show you the scheme. So everybody moves to the left. So usually when you run a play like this is kind of one thing the Niners have kind of changed the game with, and people have followed suit. But you see here, so they got the offensive lineman hipped off. They did this because of Kittle, I would imagine, at least in large part. And they're just going to run like zone left, but they hand the ball off backside. And what that does is it allows the guards, to get to a linebacker. It basically makes the defense stop, because even though the line is going one direction, the back's getting the ball handed off to the right side and the backside A gap, and it really jacks up the linebackers at the second level. So you go across, they run their little tight end cross split flow, and you see the hole here, and the hole is just because everybody has had to stop moving. And so it's almost like it feels like the reverse of what Alex Gibbs was trying to do, where he's trying to get you to stretch play side and then be able to cut back. Well, now they're trying to stretch the line, have those guys stop, so second level we can get on our backers and get great angles, and then allow our running back to jump cut back play side and get out the gate. And of course, he does a lot of yards after contact, just like Josh Jacobs. Don't sleep on Purdy either. So if you show that they're going to bring pressure, they're going to be able to identify it. And Purdy has the experience at this stage and the kind of moxie to understand that if he sees the safety covered up, we're going to do a quick peek. Okay, he's gone. We've got a hot route, and I'm just going to escape to the other side, and he can take this all the way down to the goal line. And so you don't sleep on him. You don't spy him necessarily, but you do have to be aware he has made a lot of plays with his legs this year. Now, this is the thing that you kind of separates, when I talk about Trent Williams versus everybody else on their team. So you see they have an extra offensive lineman. And on this play, they are going to have a double with the Y tight end and the outside player. They're going to have a backside double from the guard in the center. I'm talking about the left guard. Obviously, backside, they're going to do their own thing. But they're just relying on this one human to make the hardest block this is the hardest block on the field. And, Trent's one of those guys where he doesn't have great technique necessarily all the time. He has unbelievable feet, not necessarily always great. Always has great footwork, not necessarily the hands that you want. But he's such a dominant force. And you just see how he stays upfield on this angle and forces this guy to play weak over the top. And because of that, the guy's like 6-7 yards deep by the time he can figure out how to get off him. McCaffrey makes the play, and that's where the game is won. These are easy reps. What do I mean by that? So this is really a running play because he throws the ball backwards. But for the offensive line, you look at the right tackle and the guard, who aren't great human movers, and the Seahawks probably feel good about that matchup. They're just going to run a toss against their left defensive end, left tackle, and left defensive tackle and linebacker. But because they drop back and pass and they throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and they're willing to do this, and it turns effectively into a toss play, and they actually bring the center out so we can get on one of the backers. But this is easy reps for the offensive line that are really hitting yardage in the running game. It's a really genius play. I know that there's a couple teams that are doing this, but look at the numbers that you get here. And this is essentially just a swing pass, but they've done it out of pistol with a fullback, and they've set back with the right tackle, right guard. And so the linebackers are soft, the DBs are soft. The defensive end has no chance of actually getting to this ball, so you don't have to worry about knockdowns. And it happens so fast, it effectively is like, just maybe a half second different than a toss play. But because the linebackers are reading pass, they take that step backwards instead of towards the running back. Easy yards, man. Easy, easy yards. So you got a 2x2, motion across. And this is what I think you have to do with this team. And you have to pick your spots, certainly, because they run the zone. But they don't do a good job, in my opinion, of consistently being able to pass off flat players when the flat players. So right now we're going to spike the defensive end. I don't think they do a great job on the guy who has to protect, like the B gap, for example, here, the left guard. I don't know that they do a great job here, particularly when you're running an even defense that the center is not marked up, because that means the guard has to stay for an extra half step because of that, like 2i in this case, right? So is that a 2i or a 3? I can't tell. I think it's a 3. Sorry. But because both those guys are spiking, the guard's got to go like 1-2 and check that 3 technique and then open up back over here. And unless they have a triple call on or something, like the tackle might be able to pick this up and get to the second level, but it doesn't matter because the guard is disrupted. We'll see that happen right here, and I'll show it on the end zone. So you just see, if you make McCaffrey jump cut in the backfield, that's, really the best case scenario, aside from obviously getting the tackle for loss. But you see here with the spike look, and you can read this. If you're playing left guard and left tackle, you probably are reading this just by their stances, or maybe they don't have a call for it. You see the guard's not ready. He ends up getting run into here in the B gap, and we get some penetration upfield. You don't have to make that play. You just have to make the running back stop. Again, they still love running a lot of that condensed stuff and then forcing you back wide to find space. I'm showing this here. They've been running this a lot, and they're trying to extend out. Now, when they don't have Kittle, then even if they want to bring the extra lineman in, that tight end, and we'll see it, he gets boxed in a little bit here. The play gets stretched out, and they end up having some problems. So, showed here you watch 82, who's not probably the ideal guy here, but you get the edge set on you because you take poor first step footwork. And instead of hitting your landmark and just letting that big old 320-pound tackle run through the defensive end of the outside backer, you get caught up a little bit. Now you get 2 guys outside you. Now you're out of control. Guys make plays. So when you see that, you have to really be able to set that edge and take a lot of pride in it, because you can see that guy missteps a lot of times. Just a quick 4-man rush and a 4-2 look. You see the pressure here. Something a little bit new. He's not invincible, right? Still, first ballot Hall of Fame player. Does get bowled from time to time. When Purdy's looking to his left and he gets bowled, he feels it. I think what saves these guys a lot is when Purdy's looking to his right or down the field, when he has his back turned, he feels it, but he's not aware of it to the point where he moves. And so there's a lot of times where that guy might get a hand on the shoulder pad backside, but it doesn't matter. But if you can put your hand in a Big Trent's chest and do a little push in there, when Purdy comes back to his left side, he will feel that. You end up getting the sack on the backside here, but really the the left side guy makes the play. And then this is why we don't set flat. This guy's, arguably the best player of his generation. But you set out flat and you see what happens. You punch out, you're a little bit tall, but the angle is so poor that you give up a short quarter when you get double swiped with your hands, and there's just too much space for him to run on. They end up getting flushed in the pocket, and then we get a holding call right here. Purdy can run and use his legs and escape, but you want to get in those situations where those linemen, anytime your back turns to the quarterback and you get out of the pocket, you're in a situation where you can more than likely get yourself a holding call, especially these days. So let's talk about defense. The defense are giving up 22 points a game. Good for 16th in the league. So you kind of always think this is going to be a top 5 defense. Not necessarily the case. On tape, they've had some injuries as well up front, and Bosa is a big one that we don't know if he's going to come back. But I think he had 2.5 sacks or sack and a half, something like that last week before. He was disruptive as hell, and then I think he hurt himself on actually a sack or re-injured his hip flexor, maybe the other hip flexor. But you do see a pass rush that can be absolutely devastating at times. They're not as consistent with the amount of pressure that they, at least effective pressure that they brought before. And Nick Sorensen, I think, is the new DC. Maybe not the same makeup or type of pressure that we've seen in the past. Um, I think Yetur Gross-Matos has been playing really well. He played really well last week. I think he's back off of injury. I always really liked Malik Collins. He came over from the Texans. He's got some really nifty pass rush rooms inside. It'll be interesting to see him match up with Sean Ryan. I think that's a matchup that they probably like with him or with Josh Myers. Run and pass. I think he's a very disruptive player when healthy. He's had a couple of really good years. Listen, Fred Warner is still one of the best guys to watch on tape. If you want to know how to play, like when I work with my nephew, who's a linebacker, and we want to talk about how to do things the right way, flat foot reads, all of a sudden be sudden about your life. Fred Warner is the guy that we constantly pull up on tape. I think he's amazing. I do think the Packers have an opportunity to isolate or find some matchups that they like with our former All-Pro Devondre Campbell, who was nice enough to leave us some parting statements as he walked out the door. Now in San Francisco, certainly I'm sure he's happy playing on that defense in that environment. But I think there's some things you see on tape that you might like to test out with him. Certainly, at least from our time together. I think the real test for the Niners, when you look at their team, is in the secondary. Javarius Ward's hurt. He's been a great player for them. And they're starting 2 rookie DBs, one at safety, one at right defensive back, I believe. And, I mean, listen, when we kind of, we'll look at the defense. Yeah, let's look at the defense first. It's a great matchup. It always is. I think the Packers, there's so much hope, I think, because the Packers did so well against these guys offensively last year when I think they were even better defensively. In the playoff game. Obviously, you lose it, but you come out away from that game and think that's going to be like your launch pad, your springboard for bigger and better things. Now, I don't think, to be fair, we've talked about this. Offensively, the Packers have put up these like ridiculous numbers, but then you look at the sheet and you go, it doesn't feel like Josh Jacobs got as many carries as he should have, or last week I think they had 366 yards on offense, and you're like, man, that was not a very good day. But you realize, 2 more touchdowns, 35 points, all of a sudden it is a really good day. So there's a little bit of that going on. And I think it always is the case with them. I don't know if it's because they have so many plays in bunches or they have so much talent or the expectations are so high. But certainly you feel like this will be a good test and a test, quite frankly, if the weather's nice, that I think the Packers could do really well with. I just think the matchups favor them. The tackles, Leonard Floyd is a good, not great pass rusher. Nick Bosa, it looks like he's hurt. Gross-Matos is a really good player. 91, I forgot his name, and I apologize. He's a really good player as well. I like him, but they're not guys that you're going like, okay, we have to game plan against. So the only guy, up front that you're really staring at is probably, obviously Fred Warner in the screen game, Fred Warner in passing situations. I'll show you why here in a second. Malik Collins is really good, but and maybe he's good enough to say, let's just slide the center that way more often than the other D tackle. Because remember, the kid from Hargraves is hurt, so they're missing that, that piece of the puzzle. If they can shut down the push on the inside and keep Jordan Love, pushing off his back foot, planting on his front foot in the pocket, I think you'll find in the secondary, there's going to be some opportunities and there's some windows to throw. And certainly the Niners will play a box that allows you to at least try to run. They're happy to play a 4-3 and stick with a 4-3 with a cover 2 over the top. They'll bring down guys if they feel like they have to. And if it was me, quite frankly, I would start from the jump and stop Josh Jacobs and let Jordan Love do what he needs to do in the air and let the Packers beat writers talk about what a great game he had, but I would not let Josh Jacobs go for 150 against me if I was the San Francisco 49ers. I would shut that down immediately. Let's take a look at their defense here. So you got to wait. So you see Fred Warner. So they're going to run a hook and they're going to run it like I can't remember if it's a deep slant or a dig. But Warner sits in the passing lane, right? So you got to wait. You got to look him off. And so that gives that rush an opportunity to get home. But the windows are there. You're going to be able to complete passes on a one-on-one basis. The pre-snap ID is critical. So they go motion early because they want to see if Fred's playing man. Because now they've got that bunch down on the bottom. They know they're playing man defense. That means the outside player, the outside defensive back, who's like what, almost 10 yards off the ball, now is going to, if we let's say ran him on a shallow cross, has to run all the way across the field, almost an impossible ask. So they go bunch, they bunch release go underneath. But the big thing here is they do two things: they ID the coverage, and then they add another human for that defensive back to have to trace his is that Jigba Smith, number 11 for the Seahawks, all the way across the field. Easy pickings. So Geno Smith does it on his own here, and I think I go back, and I think one of the things you have to always be aware of, because Jordan Love's got wheels too, and this is not designed, but the guard gives up the inside lane and they get flushed, but because the Niners are worried about the pass, Geno's actually got some wheels. It's funny. I think he got clocked at like 20 miles, some ridiculous thing nobody thought, but he's actually a really good runner. He was never touted that when he was coming out, certainly for all these years, but he's got a little bit of juice to him. So I'll be interested to see what they do with Jordan Love here, knowing that he'll be very happy to take that 10 yards. Or we're hoping he'll be happy to take that 10 yards. I know checkdowns and maybe getting the freebies are something that he's probably looking at this week a little bit harder after the last couple of weeks. So the opportunities might be there because they are not afraid to do a four-man rush. And I think that won them the game right there, that play. So we see it here. You just have to be smart. So the safety covers up, and I'll tell you and I don't know if it's because they're rookies or younger players, but it's been interesting to me, and as a general statement, to see how many times these guys have shown that they're going to come off the edge based on the positioning of the safety behind them. I've always thought that was an unnecessary alignment where you have to be directly behind a guy before you're allowed to go. You see the really top teams or the really top guys feel like that's not necessary, but you see a lot of these guys feel like they almost have to be mirrored 10 yards back. But in the slot, what's important to understand here is if that guy's coming, that means the linebacker's dropping. So where do we not want to go? Back to the middle. They do a great job of route adjusting here. This is just what we call a side adjustment. So he stays, immediately just gets into the open space. We have the go route on the bottom of the screen to take away that corner. And then this is really just a relatively easy pass and catch. Get your yards where you can. That's the big thing here, is just stay on schedule. So you see this a couple times in the game, and I had watched this game a couple times over, and so they're running backside fold blocks, right? And you do this sometimes because you feel like you're going to cut the defense, and you don't want to get caught up, especially when you have like two tight ends blocking. They think the defensive end can basically collapse that whole side regardless. So they try to run the fold here and they fold up to Devondre, and it just doesn't work. I don't know if you can hold up one way or another. But the way that these guys swarm to the ball, if you have to jump cut in the backfield, you're pretty much done. And then they try it again. Like for me, I think you just need to move humans. I would rather see them try to double and get vertical push and work up. That's what the Packers traditionally do. So I don't think you'll see this, but one of the reasons they have to do it. Boy, that tape was bad. Let's try that again. See if I can get a little bit more out of that. So you see they're going to pull this around. It's called, again, a full block, try to pull around, and there's really nothing to hit. That guard gets beat and essentially destroys this whole play. The backside guy then can chase down the play. The pursuit of the Niners, for the last couple of years has always been really impressive to me. The way that they get bodies to the ball. And you see that, Devondre's sitting back and kind of waiting for this because the defense or the defensive tackle effectively just destroyed two holes right there and took out two offensive linemen. So put him in a good position to be successful again. I don't know if I tried a single block on the backside. Look here, and they're just kind of standard 4-3 look. And look how many guys they got running to the ball here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 guys on the screen. all trying to finish backside. You really here's 10. You really got to get if you get strung out, if you can't go downhill, if you can't hit your hole. This is a really tough team to play against, and I say that only because Josh Jacobs has done such a good job. You can see on his touchdown last week where he can jump out and beat leverage. Not that you can't do it here, but these guys are, in my opinion, are really good at chasing the football. And this is the other thing they're pretty good at: holding up in the secondary long enough to get home. Last week they lost this game, but boy, they played well. I thought Gross Matos showed up and showed out. I hadn't seen him on tape for a while, so I don't know if he was injured. I don't follow the Niners exclusively, but he did a couple of things in this game, particularly running TE games. He had 2 sacks, or excuse me, he had 2 kind of cause for sacks on TE games that I thought were just super high level. I think this is it again. Come on. There we go. So good job winning here. He's supposed to actually pick, but he wins so badly that he just gives Floyd the freebie. And then we got, this is just not a day at the beach for our offensive line. You look at this, if it's, 3rd and 8+ and they want to hold the ball. The worst thing in the world is if, like, you're an offensive lineman, it's like 3rd and 8, screen. You're thinking to yourself, like, quick screen, draw, something. And they go, like, 75 protection, boys. Hey, I'm going to need a little bit of time on this one. You're like, oh, okay. And, oh, by the way, it's going to be scat. Like there's no tight end, no running back blocking. It's like a 22 scat look. So they're going to run the TE up top, or excuse me, on the right. They come through, and somehow the running back, I think it's Charbonnet, gets in the way of the right tackle, and Bosa ends up getting one of the sacks, or at least half a sack. And then I think you got one more here, where it's like you got him double team, man. You got the triangle going. Like this is absolutely ridiculous. You stop him, and then you stop your feet at right tackle. He hits Purdy so hard he gets hurt. So tough sport. Hey, we need to listener questions real quick. I did have 2 keys to the game, and I think I talked about it, a little bit before, but neither of these teams have been very good with. Let me rephrase that. Neither of these teams are very good from a red zone efficiency standpoint, scoring touchdowns. We saw that last week with the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, I think the Niners are. Let me get the stat up real quick. I don't have it up. I think they're like 24th or 26th in the league in red zone efficiency. Okay, so that part of it is huge. Holding on to the football, the Niners are +3 in the turnover ratio, and obviously with the way McKinney played early on with all those picks, we have a plus turnover ratio. But when you lose that part of the game, particularly with the Niners, when they lose the turnover battle, they do lose the game. At least this year, that holds true. So something you really want to think about. The other part is, like, can we hold up in the trenches on both sides of the football? Because they show a lot at you from our defense, their offense, especially if Kittle's healthy. There's just a lot of things they can do with the football. There's a lot of places the ball can go. It's a lot like watching our offense, quite frankly, except I think they have more effective people in certain places. Like Tucker Kraft, when he gets better in a couple of years, he wants to be George Kittle, right? We don't have a use check. McCaffrey and Josh Jacobs, we can say right now they're playing the same style of ball, but and Jaden Reed, when he gets a little bit older, he's going to be like, I want to have the same kind of career Debo's having, right? So we have the young guys that are mimicking those guys and might be on a game by game basis just as good. We don't know, but right now, just from a historical perspective, you would say that team maybe has some of those talented players that really make it difficult for the offense to understand where the ball's going. And then defensively, we just saw it. I mean, they have, especially if Bosa is healthy, but even if he's not, Leonard Floyd's always been a really good player. I think he's like 32, but he can still rush the passer. I love 91 on their team. Malik Collins is a really good interior pass rusher, just a really good interior player. It's crazy how, I think Grenard's up in Minnesota, and it's crazy how many good players the Texans on defensive line have produced. Man, Will Anderson's going to be another one. Obviously, they brought over Danielle Hunter. He's from Minnesota, but they've just got dudes all the time there. Anyways, and then when Bosa's healthy, huge problem. So and then who knows? I think Hargrave's out, but they had Javon Hargraves. We want to talk about a real problem that guy is inside. So lucky he's not playing. With that, let's go. Let's go. Listener questions. All right. First question up. Which side of the Niners team is biggest threat to the Packers, offense or defense? I always think, well, it's a really good question, actually. I mean, I suppose if you're asking me, do I think the Niners are going to score more than 25 points? Or to put it on the other side, do I think the Niners are going to give up less than 22 points? So they average on defense 22.2 points a game, and they average 24 points a game on offense. I think the Packers are going to score more than 22 points this game. I could be wrong, but I think they're going to score more than 22 points. So I guess offensively is where I would say the Niners have the ability to outperform. And I think honestly, a lot of that has to do with whether or not Kittle plays. I think if Kittle plays, they outperform because he can do so much more. And even if they bring in the heavy set plus Kittle is a lot different than a heavy set plus 82. I don't know his name. He's not the same player. Another good question. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. Is Tom Clements, the quarterback coach, a Hall of Fame coach? So I think he had Brett in 06, which is after I left. And then I know he was with Aaron. Obviously with Jordan, Jordan's a good player, but the jury's still out on is he going to be an Aaron and a Brett. I think that's a little bit premature. And I think quite frankly, I think there's a ton of mechanics issues with Jordan. And I think there's a ton of things that like I've said this a ton, man. Like if you put some of the guys that are struggling, if you bring them to Green Bay, they're not struggling anymore. And I think that when you watch, I just remember when I was playing, and guys, even before I was there, you think about the quarterbacks who went through the Mike Holmgren system. You think about Aaron Brooks, Hasselbeck. You think about Mark Brunell. You think about Kurt Warner was there for a cup of coffee. Doug Peterson, for years and years and years. These guys are all starters in the National Football League. Some of those guys are like amazing. Matt, Kurt, Aaron had a great career. Mark those guys are really, really good players. And so I think as much as anything, as we can give credit to an individual coach, which I'm happy to do, but I can't really give you a good answer there. But I do think that the environment that you're in and the people that you are surrounded by, and I'm talking maybe about philosophy from the head guy or culture from the head guy, but also the players that are around you, I think that has a direct effect on how successful you are. And I think you continue to see that in different forms and fashions with different positions across the league. But certainly the quarterback growth for the Green Bay Packers has been amazing. Now, if you were going to rank those three guys, you probably rank Aaron 1, Brett 2, and Jordan a distant third at this point because it's still relatively young in his career. But it will be interesting to see, and you certainly hear so many good things. Listen, when you hear one player talk good about one coach, it can be a personal relationship. Okay, when you hear every player that goes in that room talk good about that coach, he's a good coach. That's a good ass coach for you. This 49ers team has been fill in the blank. This 49ers team has been searching for a spark. And I think that's red zone efficiency, like we talked about offensively. And then I think their turnover ratio, while it's +3 right now, is not what they're used to. If you look just at the numbers, this team should be, an 8-2 team. A 7-3 team, not a 5-5 team, and they've lost a couple games recently that they're going. I know that they walked out of Seattle going, "There's no way we lost that game," but they find a way to lose games every once in a while. What makes Zach Tom so good, and how does he hold up so well against edges like on San Francisco? Well, Zach Tom first of all, he's a really good player. I think here's the easiest thing to say: when you teach a good athlete how to get to their spot with some semblance of body control, you're going to have a lot of success. And I know that's again, sometimes I say stuff and I'm like, these guys must think I'm an idiot. But when I talk to football players at every level, it's all about how you get to your confrontation spot. Are you under control? Are you in balance? Are you in a position to strike? And where is that on the field? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And I think when you look at guys, when you look at Mark Tauscher or Chad when I was playing, different body styles, different. It couldn't be more different, right? Just physically, right? But one thing that they both could do at an incredible level was, given what they were good at, given their leverage points, given their balance, given all the things they had going for them, I'm talking about the outside tackles now. They could get to a spot where they felt like it was very, very difficult for the person to beat them. Bakhtiari is the same way. David Bakhtiari had the ability to get to a position on the field where effectively the defensive end ran out of options, right? So the goal is for us as blockers, this is how I teach these guys now, the goal is for the defensive player to run out of options, and they have to go through, because you can sit on that and you can punch through that and you can do all these things. So basically what that means is, am I covered up? Is my profile one that's not giving up a lot of surface area, right? Do I have a hip hinge position, et cetera? And I think Zach Tom does that at a really, really high level. The other thing that is evident is the Packers, like every other team that's worth their salt now, they run a lot of things that make it difficult to get a clean rush off on any particular play, whether it's because you're getting chipped, whether it's because you have the tight end at the line of scrimmage now, whether it's because it's a play action or a keep pass, whether you're running that split flow where the guy's coming backside or you're pulling a guard. There's so many things you have to look at. It's like, how many plays am I really going to get where I know I'm one-on-one, I'm not going to have a center slide to me or guard slide to me, and I'm going to win that match. Like, let's say you get 8 plays a game at the right tackle position. That's probably more than that. Let's say 12. There's 12 plays a game where you're like, this is a 5-step drop. He's going to hold the ball, and I have to win, right? That's where you make your money. And I think what Zach Tom does so well is that in those moments, he does not shy away. He gives that player his best stuff. Whatever that is, he gives him his best stuff. He doesn't try to get fancy and try out all these different moves, try all these new sets, all this BS. He does the best that he can in that moment, and then he learns from it and moves on. And I think that is the hallmark of a really, really good player. Last one. Watch a few 49 games on NFL Plus. Seems like Williams, I'm assuming Trent Williams, lines up in the backfield all the time. Thoughts? My thought is that rule has been bastardized since I played. I don't really understand what point they're trying to make. I know that there's procedure penalties early in the season were absurd. I remember the Texans game. I think they flagged them 5 or 6 times, and then you watch like the Kansas City Chiefs guy, and you're like, what are we even talking? It's not even the same sport, right? Either line up offsides or starting early. I watched Trent, and I've never sat and gone like, oh, wow, he's offside. I never think that at all. That doesn't mean that it's not. That just means I don't look at it that way, probably because I don't like that rule. But listen, we're -2 here. Game should be won. -2 at home is kind of like coin flip, right? But this is a good game that gets 2 good teams. It'll be. I think the injury report is huge. Jay Alexander didn't practice yesterday, I think. So I'm doing this on Thursday. That would be a big deal. Obviously, not as big because of Ayuk not being there, but still they've got talent. They can throw the football. They do. Given who they have in the backfield, they throw the football a lot for me. A little bit surprising, but what do I know? Shanahan's a damn genius, and I'm not. So, guys, YouTube button, subscribe, like, rate, review. Thanks to our sponsors on the BetOnline, betonline.ag. Go to their website, check everything out. A lot of fun, even though the political game's over. And we'll talk to you soon.